Each day, the world has shown more consequences from the climate change, forcing the various societies departments to understand the occurrence of these events in the most diverse territories on the planet, and also acting on the impacts on human rights in the existing communities. To talk about this dilemma and how it affects the human rights of drinking water and sanitation, I am going to share with you the reality of some communities in my region, northeast Brazil. According to the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change reports, our northeastern semi-arid is one of the most affected areas by climate change on Earth. In this region, from the climate point of view, there are intense annual values of sunlight incidence and the influence of the continental equatorial air mass, which characterize the hot climate and the low rainfall in the region. From the socio-economic point of view, this region has lower rates of social and economic development, especially in the areas farthest from large cities, known as sertões. In the sertões, as you can see, you find a large part of the population developing agricultural activities, such as rain-fed agriculture, especially for this climate. In other words, being an already vulnerable region, the impacts of climate change promise to further compromise the reality of northeastern farmers. These people live in poverty, incompatible with the demands of human rights. Therefore, this view makes climate change a human rights issue and offers the opportunity to treat it as an ethical social issue. In our region, the impacts of climate change on human rights of access to water are in the form of lack of rain or no rain, accompanied by high rates of evaporation, resulting, for example, in the reduction of river flows. Soon, their bases of support are diminished, affecting the local economy and even the food of these families who depend on their plantations. The crisis becomes even more catastrophic when competition for local water resources begins. In these situations, women and children are usually responsible for finding sources of water for their families. However, in the circumstances of long droughts, the effects of diluting pollutants from sanitary sewers is reduced, which affects the quality of available water resources. As a result, in addition to women and children moving away from tasks such as work and school, this access to water affects the definition stipulated by the UN, as the places are distant from their communities and it is not uncommon they contact with sources contaminated by bacteria, causing diseases such as diarrhea and schistosomiasis. What all this phenomenon can cause is a displacement of the population from the countryside to the large cities, intensifying the impacts of climate change on water and sanitation rights in this new environment. However, the occupation of urban space has repeated the same formula since the 60s and 70s in informal settlements, representing the lack of options and the absence of the government, such as the favela do Dendê here in Fortaleza, the city where I live. In this context, another risk of climate change is intensified, the increase in the frequency or intensity of rainfall. In the case of intense rain, this location will be destined to floods and landslides, and this would also imply an increase in turbidity and fecal contamination of water in a place without adequate sanitation infrastructure. Furthermore, it would generate an increase in the phreatic level and a greater infiltration of groundwater into the sewage collection network, resulting in overflows and damage to an already needed system. And again, there are homeless people. In view of this reality, improvements can be defined as investments for the protection of the population, construction of good water governance, and also in the qualification of people for the risky situations that should arise in greater quantities in Brazilian cities. This is exactly what vulnerable communities, such as northeastern farmers and citizens from the suburbs, need in a context of climate change to ensure their full rights to safe drinking water and sanitation.